The Florida government has veered in an anti-liberty, anti-choice direction with the enactment of its new restrictive abortion laws. Now, a woman cannot choose to terminate a pregnancy for any reason after 15 weeks, even in cases of rape or incest. I have a patient who is in the early third trimester who is being forced to carry a fetus to term, even though this fetus will not survive in the outside world due to a medical condition. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, it's Dr. David. So this is going to be a more serious, more somber presentation that I've made compared to most of my videos, but because of the topic, I don't have much joy today. Now, of course, we do ask, please join us on our social media platforms, subscribe to this channel, support us over on Patreon, help share the information. We know that this information needs to get out there more. Now, as I have often stated, I believe people should have the right to choose how their medical health proceeds. And this is true in terms of whether they do or do not choose to put natural remedies into their bodies, medicines, or vaccines. And it also believes that a woman should have a right to decide how her reproductive health and how she decided to proceed or not with a pregnancy. Now, overall, that means I believe that the government should stay out of people's business when it comes to their own personal healthcare decisions. Now, as you, I'm sure, know, this past year, the federal government, due to the U.S. Supreme Court decision, ended Roe v. Wade and put the right to restrict abortions into the hands of the individual states. And this is being looked at a very different perspective from state to state. Florida does have one of the more restrictive laws now. And what we hear is that the governor and the legislator is looking to make it even more restrictive going forward. Now, the laws prior to this were really in place in allowing for a termination up until viability, when a fetus would potentially be able to live outside of the womb. Now, most late-term terminations were happening almost exclusively because the life of the mother was in jeopardy, or the health of the fetus and the potential survival was in significant jeopardy and not likely to be successful. But now, as I mentioned, that is no longer a thing. Now, after 15 weeks, even if there is rape or incest, a woman cannot choose that decision. Now, I recently saw a woman who I'd been seeing for general holistic health, came to me with some more GI issues, who we were able to clear through our holistic methods, who told me that she was in her early third trimester of pregnancy, and of which, hearing this news, I was excited to hear about this, and started to congratulate her when she's paused me and said, well, actually, this is not going to turn out well, or something to the effect of that. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she says, well, this fetus is not going to survive. She said, we have a diagnosis of Potter syndrome, where this fetus is not developing kidneys or a bladder. And of course, that is not compatible with life. And because of these new laws, there is no doctor who would be willing to terminate the pregnancy, even though there's no chance of survival. But even more than that, because there is no amniotic fluid being produced, because that is what comes from fetal urine, the fetus, as it's growing inside, is being restricted, and which can cause more discomfort to the uterus. The woman is having round ligament pain and pelvic pain that is only supposed to get worse because of this. Now, the fetus will not survive. It will either be a stillborn or will potentially survive for a couple of hours. Because this was learned about, now this is something that they have to deal with, and she is being forced, as I said, to carry this baby to delivery. Now, they will induce at 37 weeks, which is when a fetus is no longer considered preterm. That it will be allowed to do a natural induction, because that's the law says you can induce at 37 weeks. But imagine if you learned that you had, or your spouse had to carry a fetus that has no chance of survival. Imagine what that would do to you psychologically. Imagine if you're a woman, if you knew you were going to suffer pain and get worse, or as a spouse, watch your partner suffer through this worse and worse, and know it's going to still go on for another 5 or 6 weeks before anything can be done about it. Imagine what type of therapy a person must go through in order to that. Imagine having a 4-year-old child, as this couple has, who was thought, hey, there's a fetus coming, a baby will come and will come home, and that will never happen. Imagine what this 4-year-old is going to have to go through. The type of therapy that thankfully we're starting to initiate now to help work through this process, but knowing that he's going to see his mom belly growing further, watch her mom, his mom emotionally suffer, and father, and imagine having to process that. What 4-year-old would be able to process that? Should be forced to go through that also. It is so sad. Now, we also know that labor and delivery itself is not a benign event. There can be very dangerous things, although not common, that can happen to the woman. A hemorrhage. Something else could potentially go wrong. Not all women even survive childbirth. This is really scary. Imagine being told that you have to do something that has absolutely no potential benefit, but only potential risk. Sounds to me like this family is not even able to be practicing informed consent, which is where a decision can be made when weighing the potential risks versus benefits. Okay. And as I mentioned, now the Florida legislator and governor is looking to make even more restrictions than what are currently on the books, which, of course, what other types of unintended or intended consequences may this have? Overall, this brings me so much sorrow to see that a couple or anybody would have to go through something like this. In all honesty, it makes me embarrassed to be a Floridian. Have a nice day.
If you like what you've seen, see that subscribe button there? Please click it and turn it from red to gray.